Welcome to the Future You YouTube sessions. This month's guest is Claire Paphitis, also known as the Ayurvedic Coach. She is a fully trained qualified consultant, trained by one of the foremost Ayurvedic doctors in Europe.
So here we're talking about your digestive fire. So the digestive fire is really important in Ayurveda.
She is the author of Balance Your Agni, an essential guide to Ayurveda. She is also a columnist for the Natural Health magazine. Welcome, Claire. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. I'm really excited to be here and to talk to you.
So the title of your book is Balance Your Agni. So what is Agni?
It sort of means your fire. So here we're talking about your digestive fire. There are hundreds of Agni in the body, but the principal one, the one we need to be concerning ourselves most with, are the ones in the tummy, in the liver. These are the houses of the digestion. So the digestive fire is really important in Ayurveda, and this is what this word Agni is meaning.
So what is your digestive fire?
Well, it's the place where everything is processed or digested. So in Ayurveda, there is this saying, or this line in one of the ancient texts, and it says the root cause of all disorders is an impaired Agni, an impaired digestive fire. And so this is the thing, when I was approached to write the book, initially the working title was Find Your Dosha. And dosha is obviously a word I think a lot of people are familiar with that within Ayurveda, but it causes a lot of confusion. And I said, look, why don't we do it something a bit different? Why don't we talk about balancing your Agni? Because this is something I think by the time you've read the book, and it's quite short, only takes a couple of hours, I think, to get through. By the end of that, you'll have a bit more understanding about dosha, what to recognize, but you'll know about the Agni. And if you know that that's at the root cause of everything, that's the path to having good health and being in balance. So we say that everything that goes in, and I say this to patients all the time, it's food, it's drink, it's emotions, it's trauma, something you just watched on the news. Everything's going in. Everything has to be processed, digested by these Agni, made sense of, nourished. You can be nourished by things, or there are things that are not so good for you. These are the toxins that can build up. And we want this Agni to be working really well to distinguish what's the bits that are going to do us good, what are the parts not so good, to be able to process those and let them go. And that includes the emotions. It's just the same as you eat a banana, gets digested, you have a poo. It's the same with everything that we come into contact with. So that's Agni in a nutshell, and why it's important.
It's quite holistic then, is it?
It's absolutely, yeah. I mean, Ayurveda itself, yes, it's a set of sort of rules or ways to kind of live and honor the seasons and be in line with nature and so on. But when it comes to, if you're seeking advice for a particular problem from a practitioner, I mean, this morning, for example, I had someone come with a skin rash. So on her little patient forms, she just put, I've got a skin rash. But during that consultation, we went back to childhood, to issues, traumas that may have happened then. We talked about her hormones and her periods and her cycle. We found out there was some really big issues going on there, but she hadn't sort of thought to note them because she thought she was just coming for the skin rash. But it's completely holistic. I have to know, as I said, peel back all the layers. What's happened in your life? Who is this person in front of me? And why are you sitting here today with these symptoms? What's the reason? So we look at the whole picture. We don't just treat a symptom. That's it's a very Western way of treating people, and there's a time and a place for it. And I think Western medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, can work really nicely alongside each other. But our approach is very unique in terms of what's the root cause? Why is this? Find that, make sure the Agni is working correctly, and everything kind of falls into place.
And you mentioned balance. How does balance fit into all that?
Well, balance comes into, again, you can look at this from a point of view of Agni, or you can look at it from the dosha perspective. But it's like anything, I say if it's a cold, windy day outside and it's dry, are you going to go out in a t-shirt with an icy drink? No. You're going to moisturize. You're going to put warm layers on. You're going to have a warm drink. So balance in Ayurveda, it's not as complicated as it at first might seem. Like, I think we have a lot of that intuition in us of what to do. And that's a really simplistic example, but often it is that obvious. Often we might have a lot of anger or irritability. This is signs of heat in the body. So you might change your diet a little bit to have more cooling foods, more cooling spices to calm that heat, to calm the anger and the irritability that you're feeling. So that's where the balance comes in. It's always a balancing act. The seasons of the year, what's going on in our life, how we're eating, work, relationships, everything is constantly, there are all these outside factors conspiring against us. And it's how we don't try and fight against them, but incorporate them and find what works for us, what doesn't work. And then we find the balance. It's like the yin and the yang in Chinese medicine. They're all of a similar kind of vein of thought.
Yeah. And say your digestive fire is not working, what would be some of the signs, maybe, or things you might feel in your body, or emotions, or what sort of things would you recognize?
A lot of the first warning signs are things that we just kind of ignore. So bloating, indigestion, incorrect bowel movements. So sometimes, not going to the toilet every day, or going too frequently as well. That's another sign. You can go too often. Excessive gas, having reflux, heartburn. A lot of us are getting these little niggly things, and maybe we just have a Gaviscon, or we just think, oh, we'll cut out gluten, and then we cut out dairy, and then we cut out, and then before we know it, there's not much left to eat.
Yeah. And
it was all along 10 years ago telling you, oh, your Agni's, something's gone wrong. You need to look at your digestive fire. Is it too weak? Is it too strong and burning through everything? Is it too slow and sluggish? So there's lots of different places it can be in, and it will vary, things change, it'll go up and down. But for the most part, I say to people, first of all, check in with yourself about hunger. That's a really important one. Are you hungry? We should have a natural sort of desire and a hunger for food. That's the Agni waking up. And when that comes, it's important to eat something. Sit down and have a meal. Don't kind of dampen it with, oh, I'll just have a coffee and forget that I'm hungry and keep racing through the day. Stop and eat something, and give that fire a little bit of fuel to kind of keep it going. You can think of it like a literal fire. What would you give that? How would you want to fuel that to keep it burning nice and steady? So we don't want to put it out, and we don't want it raging too hot. We just want a nice steady fire. So we want to keep foods cooked, warm. We want drinks to be ideally warm or room temperature, not too many of the icy drinks, because that puts it out. And also, yeah, even though it's hot outside and it seems strange, I'm the one on the beach, we were on holiday in Greece back when we could do things like that, and I was kind of ordering a cup of tea, and they were like, hot tea? It's also quite British, isn't it, as well, I think?
Yeah.
Beach. Yeah. But, it's I feel better when I do that, and the Agni behaves itself better. And also just kind of checking in with how much you're eating food that is hard to digest. So we're talking about, red meats, hard cheeses, foods that kind of sit heavy and take a lot of power to digest. They can create a lot of toxins or armor in the body. So you're going to eat that food sometimes, it's okay, but to have that balance, try and have lighter, more easy to digest meals some of the time as well.
Yeah. And is that similar? Because I'm familiar a bit more as well with Chinese medicine, eating for the seasons. Is that something Ayurvedic medicine does as well?
Absolutely. It's all to do with balancing, as I say, those outer force with the inner force, and balancing with nature. So some of the things, Ayurvedic diet is not a strict diet. We don't really cut out any of the main food groups or anything like that. I certainly don't. And it's about, eating locally. So what is natural to the surroundings of where you're living. So often, we're in a really lucky position. We can have pineapples all year round, for example. But is that going to be necessarily the best thing for our bodies, to eat a lot of pineapples or mangoes? Those are from a very different part of the world, in a very hot country. So they'll have a different effect on the body here. So yes, sort of honouring and eating local, eating seasonally, and being aware of appetite when you're hungry, when you're full. I think Chinese medicine thinks about that as well. And those are really, really simple things that we can all be doing and enjoy, a lighter feeling and better digestive health from doing that.
Yeah, it's good advice. So I have to try and stay away from bananas. I love bananas all year round.
If you want. But you can have a banana every so often. It's just when it becomes an excess of anything, tips the scales out of balance.
Yeah. And you mentioned about doshas. So for those people that don't know what a dosha is and what there are,
Yes.
what are they?
What are they? Okay. So, doshas is a big concept to explain. So I will do my best.
Yes.
We have, so in Ayurveda, what you will have heard of these 3 doshas. So they're called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And they represent the 5 elements of the universe, the building blocks of life. So we have the ether, air, fire, water, and earth. These are the 5 elements. And we have the Vata dosha. So this is made up of air and ether. So in our bodies, this is the air, the space between things, circulation, the breath, all of these things are working. This is Vata. You can have a Vata type person. So these doshas we have all 3 within our bodies, but 1 or 2 of them will be more dominant in a person than the other. So a person who has a dominance of Vata, we'll call them a Vata type. And these people then exhibit a lot of these air and ether type qualities. So they may be very tall. They may be quite slim with their frame. They'll be very creative thinking, very often quite outgoing and chatty. There's lots of this busy energy, this air and ether, like little
buzzing around.
Flitting around. So this is how you can recognize the Vata person. We also have this second dosha called Pitta. Pitta is fire and water. Fire is usually more dominating. So for Pitta type people, they will sometimes run warm. They will perhaps be quicker to anger, be a little bit more irritable if they're quite out of balance. The strengths are that Pitta is really that fire, it's intelligence, it's comprehension, it's a strong and good metabolism. So Pitta people can eat quite large quantities of food quite easily because they have that kind of fire to burn through it. And they are driven and they're organized, they make quite good leaders, they have good, clear comprehension and understanding of things. But out of balance, they can be jealous, controlling, possessive, too kind of focused on luxury and getting things. They have to have all the nice things in life. So that's the Pitta person. And then we have the third dosha. This is Kapha, and Kapha is made of the water and the earth elements. So these are the building blocks of the body, the structures, the kind of heavier elements. That's the earth, I suppose, and the water is more obvious, the lubrication of the joints, and we have a lot of water in our bodies, 60-70%. Kapha people are, by nature, they tend to be quite gentle, very loving, very loyal people. They can hold on to a lot of emotion though. So there's that heaviness there with the earth and the water, and they can hold a lot of things. They can hoard belongings, emotions, they won't forget easily. But they're generally quite gentle kind of people. I always say you want a Kapha person in your life because they'll cook food for you and they'll look after you, and they will, they'll be that person who's always there. But Kapha out of balance, Kapha as a body type, if you like, as well, they'll tend to be more symbolizing that water and that earth. So sort of rounder figures, a bit heavier boned. And the downside of Kapha is that kind of laziness, a bit of inertia. They might, if they're not careful, head into the territory of obesity, diabetes, that sort of thing. So they have a sweet tooth, but they love to sit around and watch Netflix and chill. So they got to get moving. They need a bit of buzz. So you can see how you've got all these 3 doshas, and you need a bit of Vata if you're Kapha to kind of give you a poke up the bum and do things. And if you're Pitta, you need a bit of Kapha to kind of keep you calm. And you need all these bits, you need all these elements. It's all the part of the puzzle. As I say, it's keeping them, again, in balance. Which one's a bit too high? I'm feeling a little bit anxious, a bit kind of, I can't sleep. Or Vata, the air and ether's a bit high. Do something Kapha, have a Kapha kind of meal, calm that down. The word dosha, the reason it's it's a funny one, is because the word dosha in Sanskrit, it means like the trigger or the fault. So we're talking, when we sort of say, what's my dosha or what's happening with the doshas, we're saying, where are the faults? And actually what we should be asking, if you want to ask yourself, is what's my prakruti? So the word prakruti means this is like this is the balance of the doshas at the point of conception. So this is when it was all decided. So for me, I think probably it was decided I'm about 50% pitta, about 30% kapha, and about 20% vata. And over the course of my life, those kind of changed their amounts and And when I first came to Ayurveda, I think the pitta had gone up here. Wow. There was a lot of heat, a lot of inflammation, a lot of issues with menstruation and headaches, and there was a lot of heat that needed to come down to bring it back to that place that it was. That's my true, that's where I should be. So don't be confused, just to say to people out there, when you have these quizzes to find out my dosha, often you answer them and you'll get the answer, you're this dosha. And you'll think, I don't know, actually, that doesn't really make sense. Because it's telling you where the faults might be. And probably you need to balance something. Probably what you're getting in the result, because you're answering all the pitta questions, for example, and you come back as a really pitta and you think, well, I don't know, I thought I had a bit more of that side of me, but actually your pitta is really high. And you need to come and see me or your local friendly Ayurvedic practitioner and get those balances sorted out.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that you can change. I always thought you were just one or half one, half the other. I didn't realize that it evolves constantly.
It can change. I mean, so we have vata, pitta, kapha seasons of the year. So vata is more sort of towards the autumn when it's dry and it's windy. Kapha is into the dark depths of winter and early spring when it's wetter and colder and heavier. And then pitta season is summer, when there's heat in the air. And so your natural, the natural fluctuations, they will change with the seasons. So being a more pitta dominant person, I have to be extra careful in summer because I know that extra heat is coming, and I know I have to take extra precautions to make sure I keep enough of the cool to balance it out. And then it all sort of is kind of obvious when you look at it like this. But I think, a lot of the time we just get bombarded with so much information, don't we? I think, do this, eat this, drink this, and you'll, everything will be brilliant. And actually Ayurveda teaches us that, life is not like this. Life is this. There's ups and there's downs, there's happy times and there's difficult times. And if you can create that kind of buffer in your body by looking after your Agni, by looking after that digestion, as I said, by eating the warm foods, by eating kind of seasonally and locally, having warm drinks, you can help create a bit of a buffer against life's ups and downs so that they don't have to hit you so hard when they come.
Yeah, you're almost armed with a bit of information and some tools. You can prepare.
Yeah, you can weather the storms.
I guess you're eating intuitively as well, once you know sort of what sort of the rules as such.
Definitely. I think that happens a lot when people have worked with me for a few months. They start to say, actually I felt this today and I knew to eat that to balance out, and you don't need me anymore. You start just listening to your body again. And again, I think that's something we all have somewhere inside us, that intuition to know what's right. But sometimes we just don't listen, or we don't know how to listen, or we don't know how to translate it into what we should be doing.
And sometimes it's not till something goes wrong.
Yes, that's right. Then you
like, hello. Then you do have to.
It's definitely been my experience.
Yeah, me too.
For sure.
I think it's for most people, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's when you go to see someone, don't you? When something's not quite right.
Because it's gone wrong. I mean, often I see people when they've been to see everyone else. And then they're like, well, we'll give this Ayurveda thing a try. And often it sorts things out, and it's, revelation. And then they've got the bug, they've got the Ayurveda bug. And I guess that's how it kind of spreads and more people find out about it.
Yeah. So you mentioned ojas in your book. What are they?
Ojas is translated as an immunity in the body, like your natural immunity. it's in Ayurveda, it's described as the final product of digestion. So we eat some curry. It takes about 35 days for the process to be fully completed, because in Ayurveda we have 7 tissue levels, and each one takes 1 to 5 days to kind of receive the nourishment and that part of the digestion process. At the end of the 7th one, so that's at day 35,
oh, wow.
that reaches your reproductive organs. At that final point, they say 8 drops of ojas are produced. So these are like a very fine kind of golden liquid, which you can think of as your immunity. And if you can think, first of all, how good a quality your food needs to be, how nicely you have to have digested it to complete that 35-day process. You know, it's like filling a jug. You've got the first tissue level, it's filled up 1 to 5, the next one's day 5 to 10, and it's kind of like, you know, it's like eking it out by day 35. And then you want these 8 drops of ojas to be produced. But this is why, you know, people who have this, people who don't seem to get sick, people who, you know, they have that kind of glow, don't they? You know, sometimes people just have this wonderful glow of like goodness and wellness and health. And you can sometimes look at a person and think they've got good ojas. And it's partly to do so that Agni is strong, they're eating good food. But there's also some other kind of element to ojas, which I think becomes slightly more spiritual. And I think it's about who you are as a person, how you treat others, perhaps, what you give as a person, what you give back. I guess Mother Teresa probably had the best ojas, you know, working with people who work with, you know, or they're working with the sick, but they're not getting sick themselves because they are helping to heal others, and they're giving their love and their energy to other people for nothing in return. And this builds ojas. So, you know, a question is often, how can I build my ojas? Well, I guess partly you need to stop thinking, how can I build my ojas? And let something kind of come naturally. You know, do something nice for someone else. Go and make a nice dinner for someone and sit down together and enjoy it nicely, and, you know, taste the taste and smell it and use all your senses, and just that sitting down and in all of that, it just that will help to create this sense of ojas and this immunity. But on a very simple level, it has to be down to the kind of quality of food you're eating, or what you're eating. We all have a sneaky takeaway sometimes, or, you know, buy a packaged sandwich from M&S, and that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone that it's not okay sometimes, but think about the ojas of that versus what you might get from that, as I said, that kind of simply prepared, lovingly prepared meal that you'll sit down and have with your family. Maybe you can picture what ojas is.
Yeah, that sounds lovely though. Doesn't it? One gift that you're giving to yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I like that. So Ayurvedic incorporates a lot of spices and herbs with regards to cooking.
Yes.
Why is that, and what benefits do they give? There's
a few different reasons. So one is that certain herbs and spices actually really help your body to digest food. So something like cumin is sort of, you know, it's even talked about in ancient Egypt as being like this wonder spice, especially black cumin seeds, medicinal purposes. So it helps you to digest your food better. If, for example, if a baby has colic, a simple remedy you can make, or, you know, mothers would make in India, is a few little ajwan seeds. You'd make an ajwan tea. Ajwan is like carom seeds. And you'd give them that, and it helps to clear the air. And, you know, things like coriander seeds we use because they're very cooling. So again, you know, when someone comes with a heat issue, I'll often ask them to make a special tea with coriander seeds to cool the heat in the body. So they have lots and lots of uses, and lots of the medicines that Ayurvedic practitioners will give include what can be very, very simple, seem very simple kitchen spices, like I just mentioned, you know, cumin, ajwan, fenugreek seeds, but they have these beautiful medicinal properties. So again, it's going back to nature. It's about understanding how a herb or a spice will work, what effect it has on the body. But the other big reason is for taste. So taste is incredibly important in Ayurveda. You know, having delicious, tasty food is very enjoyable, very satisfying. It's really important to be satisfied after we eat. So we try and get people to have all 6 tastes in their food. So the 6 tastes are sweet, sour, salty. We generally manage most of those because those are the things that we think taste nice. Bitter, pungent, and astringent. And I think this is why foods like curry isn't necessarily Ayurvedic food, but things like curries that have a lot of spices in them. And I don't mean chilies, but I mean a little bit of cinnamon, there's sweetness, a little bit of lime, there's your sour, salt, obvious, bit of fenugreek, that's very bitter, bit of onion or ginger, that's very pungent and astringent. You've got your 6 tastes in a meal. And by eating in this way and having all 6 tastes, you balance all 3 doshas, because all of the doshas react to tastes differently. So some tastes will aggravate, some tastes will balance. So by having all 6 tastes, you know that you're looking after all 3 doshas. If you don't know what you're doing, just have all 6 tastes and all 3 will be taken care of. So that's why we use it, both for medicine and for deliciousness.
Yeah.
If you know specifically what the issue is, if you know 100%, oh, I've got a pitta imbalance, you can go and have a look in the book, for example, and you can see, pitta is aggravated by this, or it's pacified by sweet, bitter, and astringent taste. So I'll try and have something tonight that is those three tastes. And there's loads of stuff out there online, about what those foods are. So you can kind of go and find that out, or you can just really sit and taste the food. So one of the quite fun things we had to do when we were training is we were given like a blind test of different foods, and we had to really sit and taste them, think, is this a sour taste, is this an astringent taste, what is this taste, really, really, really think. So all the other senses closed off and you're just working with your taste, then you can figure it out.
What is astringent?
Astringent is the most obvious one, but the wrong one is alcohol. So alcohol is very astringent, which is why after a long and hard day, when our pitta is kind of boiling over because we're really stressed, we want a glass of wine because it's astringent and that calms. But better ways of getting astringency. Pomegranate seeds are quite good, actually. They've got a kind of astringency to them. And something like, again, from your spice cupboard that'd be easy. Ginger's got quite an astringent taste to it. So that's that kind of clean sharpness. That's the kind of astringent taste. So yeah, the easiest way is usually with some kind of spice, stick that in.
I love it that most of them are in your kitchen already,
We do have some very incredible herbs, from other plants and roots and different things that we use. But yeah, there are a lot of things you can do, just home remedies, like little herbal concoctions that you can knock up and
I love
doing. It can help a lot. Yeah.
And so now we're in summer. How could you eat? Is there sort of something you should be eating when it's summertime? You mentioned more cooling.
Yeah. I think if you know your Agni is not so great, so if you think it's perhaps a bit out of balance, even though it's summer and this can be tricky, still avoid raw foods, so raw vegetables and things. Try and have those cooked, even if they're cooked and then cooled down, that's fine, because it's very difficult to digest raw foods. So it takes a lot of effort and you'll get the bloating. And sometimes there's a bit of fermenting in the gut as well, with if you can't process it properly. So raw foods, anything too cold, so try and avoid ice in your drinks and ice creams. Have one occasionally, but don't be having loads of it. And I think one of my favorite ways of eating in the summer is to roast up a load of veggies and then mix them with some kind of grain and have lots of fresh herbs on there, things like basil, parsley, some cooling lime juice, again chuck on some pomegranates for that astringency and that zing, and you've got yourself a lovely little salad without lots of cold, wet lettuce leaves and cold, wet cucumber and things that will kind of, you know, put the fire out because they're a bit heavy and cold and damp.
I think I'll be doing that soon, actually.
That's it's really nice. It's really easy. You just bung together, you know, you can just get creative and just mix stuff up if that's your basic thing, and then you can make a little dressing. I love using fresh herbs, and if you grow things in the garden, you know, mint is a brilliant one to grow because it grows like a weed. It takes no effort whatsoever, and come the summer, a load of mint, you know, scattered through a salad. It's very, very cooling. It's really delicious. So yeah.
Yum. I love that.
I'm hungry now, Michelle.
I am. I'm always hungry though. I'm always thinking about food. I love food.
Me too.
So for me, I'm more Vata.
Okay.
Because I'm always like buzzing around.
Okay.
And I do find it hard to sort of calm down. What would you suggest for someone like myself who is a Vata?
Okay. I see a lot of Vatas. so yeah, this is the culture we live in. It's very fast paced, and we're, you know, as I say, there's a lot of stimulation as well. There's a lot of stuff happening. Think about doing opposite things. Okay, so one really, really simple thing. If you have that busyness, it's usually up here. It's the air and ether, a little whirlwind going around. Go to your feet, the opposite end. Take some warm, cold pressed sesame oil. Work that into your hands, and then spend 5 or 10 minutes before bed massaging that into your feet. So you've got the warmth from the oil, counteracts the cold of Vata. You've got the lubrication of the oil, counteracts the dryness of Vata. Then you've got the act of doing it into your feet, which is very grounding, and that calms the busyness up here. This is a really, really simple practice that anyone can do. And I know a lot of people personally who really get into the habit of doing that now and sleep so much better for it and feel so much calmer. The other thing that's a struggle for Vata is you really do have to work at having a sit down. It's funny, but it's also not funny. If I say to a Vata patient, well, part of your prescription is that for 20 minutes every day, you have to just sit down. And they kind of look at me like, oh, I can't do that. What are you talking about? There's a million things I've got to do. I'm like, you have to just sit down and look out the window and drink a cup of tea. But if they do it, they really, really feel the benefits. You just have, Vata is this phonetic energy. You have to do the opposite. Sometimes you just have to stop and you just have to slow down. And it's really hard to do, but it gets easier with practice. So those are two quite easy things that you could incorporate, Michelle. You'll have to let us know how you get on.
I will. Oh, thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
For those interested in getting hold of your book, where could they go?
All good bookstores and on Amazon, wherever you are in the world. It's published pretty much everywhere, I think, now. So you can get hold of it online from Amazon or in a bookstore if you can go into one. Yeah.